celebrate Mad Max Fury Road's 1 year anniversary, I'm going to give you my top 10 favorite action films of all time. Before I begin, a lot of the choices I've made I've already given reviews on, so I won't go into too much detail with them. Also, there are no superhero films on here, because if I included superhero films, they all win. I'm also being a bit lenient as well, as I've included a couple of sci-fi films. I'm majorly not focusing on how good the story was, because let's face it, when you go see an action film, it's mainly because you want to see action. However, I did have films that had great stories that complemented the action. And once again, this is my personal top 10. So other than that, let's get into it. Number 10. Big Trouble in Little China. This fantasy action film directed by John Carpenter is very, very fun. For the whole 90-minute runtime, this film is just a fun experience. And the action in this film also has a bit of comedy to it. And praise must be given to John Carpenter for giving us this very fun film. It's one of the most underrated fantasy action comedies out there, but this film is worth a watch. Number 9. Kingsman: The Secret Service. As I said in my top 10 films of 2015, I had the choice to either go see this film or 50 Shades of Grey, and thank God I saw this film, because this film made me laugh in a way that I hadn't laughed in a long time. Mix in a brilliant cast featuring Colin Firth and Samuel Jackson, mixed in with the director of Kick-Ass, and what we end up with is a very kick-ass film, no pun intended. Number 8. The Bourne Ultimatum. I just reviewed this film last week, so I won't go into too much deep detail with this film, but here are the facts. This is the best Bourne film in the entire series. Matt Damon gives it his A+ best, and this is the best film by Paul Greengrass. Number 7. Casino Royale. Of all the 24 Bond films there are, this one is my personal favorite. Not only does it show the origins of James Bond, but the fact that this is Daniel Craig's debut as James Bond, and the fact that he's the best Bond ever, completely shows in this film. Before this film was released, everyone was just like, oh, Daniel Craig's not the right Bond, oh, this is the end of James Bond as we know it. This film proved everyone wrong, and so did Daniel Craig's performance. Not only did this have the best action in a Bond film in years, this film sets the pace immediately, and this is my favorite Bond film of all time. Number 6. Die Hard. Or as I like to call it, the best Christmas movie ever. The thing I like about this film is, I like the action as well, but I like how relatable the action hero is. Because before this film, you had Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who are these big buff guys who can obviously stop anything. But here you had Bruce Willis, who played not a machine, not a juggernaut, just a man. The fact that a man like this could get hurt showed how human this character was. Add a brilliant villain portrayal by Alan Rickman, and what you get is an action masterpiece. Number 5. Faceoff. Mix in the craziness of Nicolas Cage, mix in the weirdness of John Travolta, and mix in the wackiness of John Woo, and what you get is a complete fantastic film. Not only, in my opinion, is this the best action film of the 90s, but you had two actors who were at the top of their game. You had John Travolta, who came off his comeback film Pulp Fiction, and you had Nicolas Cage come off his Oscar win in Leaving Las Vegas, and you also mix in one of the top directors at the time, John Woo, and what you get is a great action film with a great story as well. Number 4. Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm not going to go into too much detail with this because, let's face it, I'm pretty sure we've all seen Raiders of the Lost Ark because we all know how awesome and influential this film is. You had Harrison Ford in one of his best roles ever as Indiana Jones. You had Steven Spielberg and George Lucas at the top of their game. Mix in brilliant locations, brilliant action, and just a great adventure overall. It's hard to argue that this is the greatest film of all time, and you can see why. Number 3. Total Recall. Yes, this is a Schwarzenegger film. Yes, he's technically not a great actor. He can't deliver great dramatic performances. And the story technically isn't that great, but that doesn't matter. Here's an action film where the action completely outshines the story. So the story for the most part is okay, but the action is goddamn good. To me, this felt like the most real action film because trust me, this is a gory film. Not like that shitty 2012 remake. Here you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was the king of action films, mixed in with Paul Verhoeven, who gives the most violent action films, and what you get is a real standout film. The only thing I hate now is how we have to make that distinction of the 2012 film and the 1990 film. Come on, it didn't need a remake in the first place. Number 2. The Terminator. And before I continue, you might be wondering why I didn't put Terminator 2 on this list. Because I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't like Terminator 2. Because, let's face it, yes, I know it's a good film, the story was amazing, the action was amazing as well. In fact, the action is much better than the first one. However, the second one was a bit of a repeat from the first one. Basically, the story is the same as the first one. It was basically about trying to protect and save a Connor, and the fact that in the second one you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was playing a Terminator again, protecting John Connor, it didn't really give much threat to the film. However, with the first one, the only protagonists you can root for were humans, and the only villain in the film was this Terminator. In fact, I find the first film's Terminator more scary than the second one because you had humans going up against an unstoppable robot, and that is more scarier than a liquid metal robot. Come on, even I wasn't terrified of this thing. But the main reason I put this film at number 2 because this is the film that launched James Cameron's career. Not Aliens, not Terminator 2, this film. And this is the only Terminator film to have a perfect 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's higher than the second one, and I kinda agree with it. And number 1, let's face it, it's Mad Max Fury Road. In my review of this film, I talked about it for 6 minutes, so I won't go into too much heavy detail with this film, but let's face it. This is the best action film of all time. Not only was this a breath of fresh air, this was a film that didn't need to heavily use CGI. This was a film that used a lot of practical effects. This is a film that had a great story, the best action in an action film I've seen in years. This film will go down in history as one of the best films to ever be released. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like my Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to my channel below. I'm NETX5. Thank you for watching.